So, hi everyone, thank you for watching. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with an absolutely incredible human being. Kim Ingleby is a multi-time award-winning mind and body coach. I've actually got a list of accomplishments. I'm actually going to show this, Kim, because there's so many things that Kim has accomplished. I've actually written them all out here, which anyone who watches my interviews knows I don't always do. But Kim is a TEDx speaker, a published author of 52 Ways to Feel Good, the best-selling book, coaches a range of remarkable individuals, Team GB athletes, Olympic gold medalists, Strictly Come Dancing, professionals, business leaders, so many types of people, amazing people. Kim has raised over £85,000 for charities, has competed in 10 wild marathons, which I can't wait to get into later on. One ultra marathon, one Ironman marathon as well. I've got to get that in there. Competed in the highest level of sports, such as the Team GB triathlon, age group worlds, and European championships. Obviously, you volunteer on aid projects, Kim, all over the world. I've got Sierra Leone, Nepal, India. I think there's other places. Kim is also a brand ambassador for Optimum Nutrition, Sweaty Betty, and Shock Absorber. Has won multiple prestigious awards. We've got the International NLP Public Service Award, Bristol Happiness Champion, FHT Customer Service Finalist, and a lot more. I could be here all day with this. In short, Kim is a remarkable human being who, one of the main things I love about what she does is she gives back so much to so many other people, different communities, and to the world in general. So Kim, thank you for obviously agreeing to talk to me today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And that introduction, I said to you, I was like, oh, I always feel slightly awkward if someone's done all their research and brings those things up, because I forget that I've done them and it's me. But thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I wanted to get that in there because there's so many remarkable things you've accomplished. And I'm sure there's probably more than what I've mentioned, but I can relate to that. I mean, you feel awkward about it, but it's amazing. So starting at the beginning, Kim, I mean, obviously you've accomplished a lot, but where I want to start with this actual interview is I want to go back a little bit to the beginning. Not necessarily the very, very beginning when you were born, but a little bit later when there was some traumatic experiences that you encountered that were quite brutal, but at the same time, they were certainly a factor, it seems, in making you who you are and making you the remarkable person that you are today. Now, this is a funny one because I don't really have one specific question, and this will be a little bit of a theme today because it's a very broad experience. But in your own words, what I want to start with is how did you turn a negative experience into a positive experience? Obviously, we need to cover a little bit about what happened, but then how you turned such an awful experience into, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but into what's been a bit more of a blessing in the long run, in some ways, I suppose. So in your own words, Kim, how did you do that? How did you turn a negative into a positive?
So my best friend from university would say that I've used all of my 9 lives, if I was a cat, that they've all been used up with various kind of near-death experiences. And that's kind of contexting where I am now. But when I was younger, like everyone, well, not everyone, a lot of people have really challenging times when they're growing up. And I had quite a few different ones, but specifically relevant to this podcast, probably around bullying, but with boys and girls and, all sorts of different people, which challenged me massively and put me in a place as a very young person of not really knowing my place in the world, not feeling happy or comfortable anywhere. And although not wanting to die, not also really wanting to live and not really knowing like where my place was. And I've only really just started to talk about, those early years, but I've run my business for 20 plus years now. And a lot of people often say to me, oh, you're just like a sort of, like white witch or a mind ninja. And how do you know like some of the stuff you know? Professional qualifications and training is something that's very valuable to me. But I think the empathy and connection I have with people stems from those early years. And how did I turn it around? I mean, it's not just me. It's a team of different people. It's professional coaching. It's friendships. It's from way back then, a couple of key teachers that were really influential. I did my Duke of Edinburgh. I think that was really helpful. I worked on farms and did charity work from like the age of 14, because the things we're talking about were before then, which I think is a little more unusual that it was younger. And I just had a real desire to help people, I was like, I really want to help people see their potential and see what is possible. And that doesn't have to be a big thing, just to kind of know that they are okay as they are, which I think particularly during these times is just so important, because all of us, myself included, are going to have moments through this chaos of going, where am I? Because a lot of things that make sense to us, particularly in sport, are not there. They're not possible. So it really draws us within to question like what our purpose is and what our values are. So yeah, it's kind of like in an ironic way gone full circle, and I'm helping people again, really find themselves and commit to themselves to be able to do whatever that big or little dream and goal is.
I tell you what, Kim, that's a powerful answer. I knew it would be good, but that's amazing. It's a beautiful sentiment. It's a beautiful description of what you put across there, which I knew it would be. But thank you, because I also am aware that certain things are not always easy to talk about, and certain things that people go through, and I very much respect that, which is why I didn't sort of push for this, that, and the other. As I say, it's only about how you've turned it into a positive. So thank you for such a beautiful description of that. Now. One of the things I would like to get into is obviously the early sporting successes. Now, I know that, even at an early age, you were doing a lot of different things, as you mentioned, even just then. But, honing in just for a moment on the sports side of it, when did you start competing, and what were some of your early successes? And one of the things I want to get at here is not just the physical side of it, which people always talk about, which is obviously great, but the emotional and mental side of it, because when you started achieving, when you started sort of coming through some of those difficult experiences and having your first successes, I'd imagine it was an amazing feeling, but I don't know. So in your own words, what were some of those experiences like on a more emotional and mental level, please?
Oh, great questions. And I haven't seen your questions this time, so I am like waiting to hear what you're saying, like the listeners are. Well, it's a really good question, because actually I wasn't good at sport. I loved being outside. So I grew up on a farm and I loved being outside in nature. I loved that. But as far as sports went, I was picked last. I really wasn't good at it until probably the very latter years. But then when you get to those older years at school, like 15, 16, 17, most people at that point, weren't choosing to do sport. They were sort of forming social connections and doing other things. So yeah, I wasn't actually really good at it at all. At school, I did PE at higher, because I was in Scotland. So for my A-level equivalent, I did PE, and I had a PE teacher called Norrie Berner. That is his real name. And he was absolutely brilliant, because he saw my determination and he saw what sport gave me. And I remember playing basketball with, I think I was the only girl, maybe bar one, and all the rest were boys. And I wasn't very good, but he just kept encouraging me, to come back. And when we did our PE projects, I said I wanted to do one on horse riding fitness for the riders, mentally and physically. And he was like, oh, I'm not sure. And this was the time like before emails. And so showing my age now, but I wrote pen and paper to a couple of Olympic horse riders and said, this is my PE project. This is what I'm looking at. And they both wrote back and said, yes, we totally agree with you that physical fitness for the rider and mental confidence is important. And when I got those letters back from these Olympic riders, one was in New Zealand and one was in the UK, a male and a female, I remember thinking, oh, wow, I've got something here. And I was right. And Norrie Berner said, yes, you were. And I didn't think you would be. And it was at that moment I thought, maybe I can do something professional with this that will help anyone of any age, so like young athletes and older athletes, and anyone, realize that there is a synergy between mental and physical fitness. But I didn't really know where to go with it, but that's where it began.
Amazing. It's incredible. And the reason I wanted to highlight that, Kim, is very much to highlight the transition because, you know, a lot of people, well, first of all, a lot of people assume that people have overnight success, which they don't. I mean, you know, that's the first thing.
No.
Second of all, is I wanted to highlight the transitional period because people grow through time and they have, obviously, people get better and people learn more and people learn more about themselves and themselves in relation to others and all these things, you know, over time. So I wanted to go back there because I was just fascinated by that early transition from some of the pain and from some of the difficulty into some of the, you know, helping others and some of the, you know, the joyous moments and that sort of thing. So sometimes I do this, by the way, I sort of explain about the question, and I love the mentorship aspect of that as well, because that's a powerful thing that you had somebody looking out for you and things. So it's wonderful. It's a beautiful answer. The other thing,
I mean, just jumping in, I think
yeah.
like mentors and teachers, and I mean, people who work for charities and volunteer organizations are, you know, they are truly amazing people, and they can really transform any person, but a child's or a teenager or a young adult's life. And the power of sport in allowing you to like connect with yourself, I think is so important. And it's often, I feel really privileged that I was able to do it, but I was also really determined. You know, for like my Duke of Edinburgh, there weren't enough people to do it. So I would get the bus into like the local town, and I joined a youth group there, and I kind of persuaded enough people to do it. And I think my determination came from, you know, the younger years. But yeah, I mean, asking for help, whatever age you are, is so important. And I still do. And when you're talking about like overnight success and reading out my awards and things, I think it's also really like life is humbling, and things can happen, and any athlete or any person listening will know you can be on a high and things are flowing well, and then overnight things can change, and that can change at any age. And I think more recently, you know, I've learned that, you know, the great things you read are there, but actually, you know, to keep evolving, you have to trust yourself. And there are often moments that, you know, current me will doubt myself and use younger versions to advise myself, and vice versa. And hopefully that will help people listening, because often, you know, I work with athletes coming out of Olympic cycles, or maybe like Strictly Come Dancing professionals privately. And when those things end, it can be really challenging to actually find your place. And but it's okay, like it's normal. And so journaling, writing, asking for help, all of these things, it really does help.
It does. It does. It's powerful. It's powerful advice. It is powerful advice. You know, not bottling these things up is great wisdom. There's so many sort of golden nuggets here of wisdom as we go along, and it's fantastic. Another one that I want to I really want to hone in on, Kim, is bringing it a little bit more up to the present, or not the present as such, but, you know, further forward in time now, is obviously out of all these achievements and out of all these different things, there's a lot of them, and we'll get into them afterwards and things like that. But is there one that you're perhaps most proud of so far? And I know that obviously you're still evolving, you've got a lot of things on the horizon and things like that, but particularly looking back, and it doesn't strike me necessarily that you look back a lot, which comes over, which is cool. But is there one in particular that you're most proud of? Maybe there's not one, maybe there's more than one. Maybe,
Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, yeah.
And also no one has actually asked me that, which is interesting. And
Really?
so I'm thinking on the spot, as you know, because I haven't had the questions, which is good. And so I'm just going to give you a few. One is when I rode horses for Scotland under 2020, and I still have the memories of that, and I use it for my own sports performance as just the fearless. Like the cross country was amazing. I placed. Ewan McGregor gave me a prize, the Ewan McGregor, and that was amazing. And it's something that I use always. The very first marathon I did, New York, and I saw I would never, ever, ever do one again. I absolutely hated it and couldn't walk for about 3 months afterwards. It stands in my mind as a negative, but also a positive. And And I think, like doing my TEDx, because I was so scared of public speaking, doing my TEDx talk and going to Sierra Leone. A lot of my adventures have been humbling, but Sierra Leone with the street children was a couple of years after I'd been very ill, but putting it into context with the street children and just the trip, and that was a life enhancing trip. So that I feel blessed with many experiences I've had, and those would be the ones I would draw out randomly.
Brilliant. Incredible. I mean, it's funny that no one's asked you that, because out of all of them, I figured that them, there had to be one or two or a few or whatever. But it's interesting to hear it like that, because I sort of figured that there would be different ones for different reasons, which is what's so lovely about what you've accomplished so far. Is it obviously it's not all on one track. There's different elements. So to say the least. So obviously, I really wanted to highlight that. Now, the other thing here, sort of following on from this one, is that obviously giving back is very important to you. I mean, we've touched on that. We've talked about that earlier, but I want to hone in on that one, because giving back is something you don't always see, particularly from people that are successful. I mean, you do see a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but you don't always see it. So giving back is very important to you. Now, I don't want to sort of assume that comes from your own experiences, although I'm sure it probably does in part, but I don't ever assume these things. So again, Kim, in your own words, I mean, this sort of core of giving back to people was obviously there at a young age. It's obviously been there all through your life, really, in simple terms. So where do you think that sort of came from? I mean, is it something you've always had? Did it come from some of your more traumatic experiences? Is it something else? I mean,
again, another great question. I think I just feel like giving back for me is a core value of my business and my person. It makes sense to me, and I can't not, as it were. So even like this year with all the chaos and the change of my business, I've done a lot of community volunteering and work, charity work for sort of raising money for the NHS and things. Where did it come from? I don't know. I mean, it started when I was very little, raising like tiny amounts of money for animal charities because I loved animals. And then there was, when we're talking of mentors and people who inspire you, there was a girl at the Farm Life Centre that I used to work at when I was probably 15, 16. And she was a few years older than me, and she'd done something called Rally International. I think it was previously Operation Rally. And I thought I just really looked up to her, and I still do. And you had to raise, I think it was £2,000 or £3,000 to be able to go to fund the projects and help the people. So I worked out how I could do that. And when I did my Duke of Edinburgh, I did some fundraising. And I think when you start to do that when you're younger, you realize like how you can make a difference, but how it's full circle and you gain so much from it. My family on my mum's side, they did a lot of charity work in Jerusalem, and they founded a charity long, like over 100 years ago, called the Spafford Centre, that works with Palestinian and Israeli like orphans. And so I wonder whether there's like something just from my roots, which I never knew my great 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 grandmother, but I have an affinity with Jerusalem. I love it. So yeah, I mean, the people I've met through charity work and through sports, it has added the colour and dimension and depth to what I do, and I feel really lucky with it. So if anyone is stuck, I always say like doing a volunteering thing can help you as much as helping someone else, if you feel drawn to it. Bit of a rambled answer, but
no, it's a brilliant answer. It's there's so many powerful things in there, and I mean, I could hone in on several different ones, and for the sake of time, I won't. But it's a powerful answer on a lot of levels. Perfect. Another one, Kim, to get into here is obviously this quite a fun one. It's obviously the wild marathons themselves, and some of on that side of things. And the reason I've moved to that is obviously as I say, it's almost a little bit more of a fun sort of thing, because I want to get into, for people that don't know, what a wild marathon is, for starters, because obviously I'm not going to assume that everyone knows that.
Mhm.
And then moving on from there, just some of your experiences running them, because I'd heard of that, the whole concept, and I'd followed it a little bit, but when I researched it more for this, for our talk,
Mm.
I was amazed at the commitment, the endurance, the strength, some of the environments that they take place, and just a lot of things. But again, I don't really have like a really specific question, but first of all, I'd like to start with in explaining in your own words what a wild marathon is comprised of, and then from there into some of your key experiences running them. I mean, I had written down here the Himalayan 100-mile one as one example, just because
Yeah.
it struck me as very cool. But you can pick your own example, I don't mind. So
um,
again, in your own words, Kim.
so, I mean, deep breath there was because I mean, I have a few different health conditions over the last few years. So actually, like running more than 5 or 10K currently medically has been quite challenging. And so I take a deep breath because I cherish those memories and I hope that I will be back to it. But I also think it's really um, honest to say where I am, because when people listen, they're, oh, you can just do that tomorrow. And the Indian 100 was the last big event that I did. I do feel slightly underqualified to talk about these areas, aside from the fact I have done 10. I am inspired by so many people who do like crazy ultras and really big races around the world. But my connection with it is I see a race that links with a charity. So you end up doing like a week's work on site, like with that community or more, and you live like and eat with them. And like in Nepal, I dug water pipelines with a company called Impact Marathons. They do amazing things. Sierra Leone was with Street Child. I did a race in Romania, so in the Transylvanian Bear, like Black Country, and that was one that I just kind of did completely on my own, and like flew out with not knowing a soul. Most of them I travel on my own, and I think that's a lot of people say, oh, you go on your own, that's brave, but I kind of often don't have an option, so I just go. But the Romanian one was so remote. It was more remote than any of the others and less supported and incredible. And we did some work out there for the European National Trust, national sort of parks, and just where we went, you would never go if you didn't do a race, and that was amazing. If I bring it to the 100 miler, which was the last one, it was a stage race over 5 days in the Indian Himalayas, and it took me 3 years to get there, as in because the first year I wasn't properly trained for it and I got ill just before. The second year I got hit by a bike, a cyclist face on, broke my elbow, had a neck in a brace. So the third year it was after a family a suicide, and I kind of was like, I can't go, and I was like, I can't not go. And I am so glad I went, because if I didn't go it wouldn't have happened. But it's a truly crazy, amazing, beautiful race in the most remote area, and it's run by Mr. Pandey, who would be very happy for the mention. But it's run by Mr. Pandey, who's an Indian, and his team is Indians, and the whole logistics is local, and that to me is just even more powerful. And you're living again with the locals, and quite a few British people have done it, but it's also like anyone listening could do it. And I'm sure they're thinking, oh, if they're not like a runner, they think, oh, maybe I can't. But some of these most of them I have walked and run because of how my conditions are now. And most of them you can do. It's about if you have the time and if you have the commitment. And like I said, it took me 3 years to get to do the 100 miler. And often I think, sort of pass an opportunity by because we know we couldn't do it in 3, 6, 9 months, or say like this year and next year, chaos in the sporting world and travel has happened. So then we might let go of an idea. But I would say if it's something that keeps popping into your mind, like ask someone, can you help me? Or like, what do you think? And I genuinely believe like you could probably do it. It might take you 5 years, but what's the harm in beginning to try? Like, and just quietly like starting to take the first steps. And then in a year, if you think, actually, I don't really want to do that, it's having the courage to say, actually, I don't want to do it anymore. But at least you can put that idea to kind of like bed. It's kind of like done. Or you're like, oh, I'm a year in and I feel like I could do it. And you'll surprise yourself. You thought it might take 5 years, but you'll do it in 2. But yeah, wild remote marathons are definitely not for everyone. But for me, I love them.
Incredible. It's absolutely, I mean, once again, Kim, there's so many, what I love about your answers is there's so much contained within them. It's not just, this one thing. And there's so many different areas of wisdom and knowledge and just power. Before we get to the next question, I got to hone in a little bit more on one aspect of that, because obviously you mentioned, obviously the Transylvanian wilderness, you mentioned Himalaya, you've talked about these different places, but when you are running, I don't really know quite how to ask this one, so bear with
Just
me.
ask. I'm not shy, as in
No, it's not like a personal one like that, but it's more just how to word it. I'm basically asking about the environments. I mean,
Okay.
in other words, because it happens, you say you haven't read the questions and I'm asking them, but sometimes I think it's something, and I feel, wow. So honing in on that, I mean, running through some of these wildernesses and some of these environments, I mean, what is it like in the element of, first of all, where do you get the strength to actually, see a race through? I mean, that's one side of it, to actually, go there on your own, make these brave decisions, 100 miles. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, so it takes a lot of strength. So I do want to hone in on that, but I also want to talk a little bit about the environments just a little bit more, because I think it's something that's very sort of unfathomable to some people, to a lot of people, not in a negative sense, but in the sense if you haven't been somewhere. I mean, I've been some very, very strange places with photography and with journalism, so I have some idea, but even then probably not as remote as what we were talking about. So I know that's sort of a double-sided question. Let's talk about the strength first. Let's talk about that. I mean, obviously the strength to go there on your own, to endure the race, to see the race through, to even what you're saying there about 5-year plans, about thinking long term, which is a powerful thing, because a lot of people don't do that. It takes a real inner, I don't know what to call it, like a resolve. Like I work with other athletes, they say you've got to dig deep. That's how they what they call it.
Yeah.
It's different things. You get where I'm coming from, I hope, because it's a little bit of a rambling question. But where do you think that strength comes from? I mean, have you sort of built on it over time? In other words, you've gotten stronger and stronger. Has it always been there? Does it again go back to some of the hardships? I mean, I know that's a bit of a funny one, but I'm just curious, because a lot of people think that they don't have the sort of inner resolve and things to do some of this stuff, whereas I've seen people cultivate it over time. Personally, that's just my personal view, but I hope this one makes sense. What are your thoughts on that side of things, Kim?
So I think
Pure Blue Limitless, the purest phycocyanin on the planet. This is taking the sports industry by storm, with multiple world champions, Olympians, and many other world-class athletes, all the way down to your regular gym goers and fitness enthusiasts, even amateur athletes, using this product to maximize their potential and move a step closer to the life of their dreams. This product works in a unique way on a cellular level. Unlike any other product on Earth, this is created with a patented photobioreactor technology that no one else in the world has access to, breaking down lactic acid and reconverting it into ADP. In other words, breaking the waste and reconverting it into fuel. You can train longer, harder, faster, and considerably outdo your competition. Whether you're just looking for more energy, whether you're a professional athlete or somewhere in between, this product is for you, boosting physical, mental, and emotional health through increased energy and amazing world-class anti-inflammatory effects that cannot be beaten.
So I think mental strength and mindset and discipline, determination, all of those things are possible for anyone. I genuinely believe that, and they are cultivated in our daily habits. I also want to add that I'm human, and so although I have the big goals, like right now, I only have very small short-term goals. I don't have, because of the current climate. And if somebody listening is not sure, it's also equally okay. to just go day by day. And I think sometimes we're not given that permission. And I feel sometimes having that space is actually necessary, particularly post big events or trauma or stress. I think a lot of the challenges that I've signed up to, I have no idea if I can do it. Like, no idea. And my friends laugh because they are like, you don't even want to do what you're doing. And I go, I know, but I truly believe that if we don't stretch our boundaries, they shrink. And then we get more fearful. And I've noticed that in myself, like this year, because we haven't had, you know, those challenging experiences. We've had different experiences, but we haven't had, you know, some of the bigger experiences where you would be mixing and things with people. So I think that's one area. I think building resilience, like training your muscle and discipline, takes time. So you have to do it consistently, you know, like every year or every second year, like challenge yourself. But I do think it kind of builds. If we say about the environment, I do a lot of research before, you know, so I'll talk to the event or the organizers or the, you know, the, like Mr. Pandy, I'll talk to them. I'll read. So I'll read about the people, I'll read about the culture, I'll read about the food. So I won't have any assumptions about like they will have this because it's an event. I will go, I'm going to that country, and I also know my body. So I'm like, what do I need to take to make sure that my body is as well as possible in every sense, you know, hydration tablets, taking a few like extra snacks against weight for clothes, and you really need very little. I always take a journal. So in talking about like mental prep, trained within all the areas I'm trained in, I have a clear system that I will do like before I go and before the race, of like setting myself up on like the mental, the physical, you know, any fears, people who inspire me. So there's a whole process, and I teach that with people that I work with. And I think having that mental kind of preparation, it all sounds quite a lot, but if it's a big goal that you've invested in time, money, whatever sense, it's really worth it. But the same is completely transferable to like a life goal, setting up your own business, you know, having a baby. And it sounds really odd, but it really is. It's kind of like, you know, what are my fears? What are my hopes? Where am I going? And it's very unlikely that you'll meet anyone who is off to do something that has no fears. And I learned that when I started to work with, I mean, people are people, but when I started to work with, you know, gold medalists and extreme well-known adventurers, I was like, what on earth can they need from me? Like, how can I help them? And then I was like, put that to one side, Kim, and think about your tools and think about what they need. And in those moments, it's like, we're all people. We all have fears. We all have doubts. We all have dreams. And it's that balance of having the courage to acknowledge your fears and know what to do with them, and the accountability and discipline to move forwards with your dreams, whilst also having the permission to have a pause in the middle. And that, I think, has come through my years of coaching. You know, like that whole combination is what I believe is the best formula. But if you'd ask me at different stages in my career or different people I work with, they would probably say, you know, different parts of that. But I feel that the blend, it gives you longevity, resilience, and happiness in the moments.
It's amazing. There's so much contained, as I keep saying that, but that I've got to sort of digest, and it's wow, that is amazing. I knew the answer would be good, but that's far exceeded.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Kim. No, okay. So another one here that I want to get into on a sort of broader scope with the sports. So it's sort of zooming out a little bit now to a bigger picture. It's obviously the recognition of female athletes and the appreciation of female athletes and the development of that over you know, recent years. And the reason I ask that is because I watched that with fascination, because I don't personally think of it that way. I just think that if a person has a goal that they want to achieve, whether they're a man or a woman, or whether they're black or white or this, it doesn't matter really. But there is obviously a lot of there's been a lot of developments with female athletes, and I work with a lot of a number of female fighters with, you know, boxing and MMA and things like that. And that's, as one example, just as one example, because that's come such a long way over the past, say, even 5 or 6 years or whatever. So with yourself, I mean, again, I know it's a funny one, but I wanted to highlight this as the bigger movements of certain sports and where they're going and this, that, and the other, and with the running and with all these things. How do you feel that, you know, recognition and appreciation of female athletes has sort of developed? Maybe it's improved, and maybe there's still areas that need to improve, which I think there are. But again, Kim, in your own words, what are your thoughts on that side of things, from your own personal point of view, but also perhaps from other female athletes that you've worked with as well?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's probably a whole conversation in itself, and it's one that I mean, as we look at sort of Black Lives Matter and just inclusivity of sport. I think, having spent some of my childhood in Zimbabwe, I hope, and I think I do, and some of my childhood in Jerusalem, I think I've always had a greater awareness of what, say, like white privilege means, and accessibility of being white. And I mean, I'm no expert, so if my terminology is wrong, I apologize to any listener. But also that, the male-female divide, I think it is improving, but I do feel that females do have to work harder. And I think there's a really interesting sort of age, like perimenopausal and menopause, also in how, the assumptions of like where a woman should be in terms of their life with children and also sports performance. And so I think there are lots of topics and conversations that are opening up. But equally on the other side, my client base is 50-50 men and women. And I am fortunate enough to be trusted by parents. And I work with some boys who, or teenagers, I should say, who really struggle with, say, confidence or, body image and things like that. And they haven't found a safe space to talk to anybody. And I feel very, lucky that I can help them, and that, a younger teenager male will help let me come in and help them. So sport is interesting. It's like complex, it's freeing, but it's also, it can bring us together without having a language, but it can also, I think we have to keep opening things up, which is why I'm so passionate about doing the charity work and making it inclusive. And I mean, I do such a small amount compared to some amazing people and charities. And, talking to you, I feel like I could give you a million people who are doing the most profound things. And all I'd say is just inclusively, like, let's just keep working together to reach the communities that don't have an easy access into sport, and also to access people who do have access to sport but maybe don't feel like they have the courage to talk to someone about their fears. So it's sort of a bigger and then a small thing. I don't know if that answered your question, because it's a big question.
Well, it's a big question, Kim. I mean, I mean, it's a big one that I'm well aware when I asked it that it's almost too big to sort of go down every avenue, and that's cool. But it really highlights your own experiences, and there's some wonderful thoughts there. Just because you've been around it so much, obviously you've been around it for a period of time, and you've seen the changes, and it's one of those things where I wanted to sort of give that a mention, because well, for a few different reasons, really, which I mean, I'll go off on a tangent if I get into them. There's a few different reasons, and it answers it wonderfully, it answers it beautifully. And I know it's a whole can of worms that when you open that up, you can get into all different things. But it's really good to give that a mention, because I feel it's come a long way, but there's very much different sides to the argument. So, okay, volunteering abroad, Kim. I mean, volunteering abroad. That is extraordinary. It's a very, very beautiful thing to do. And I know I said about what I said. I said India, Nepal, Sierra Leone. I think I've missed one. I think there was another place that you volunteered. But I'd like to talk a little bit about that, about those parts of the world and about different things. As soon as you mentioned Sierra Leone earlier, let's talk a little bit about that one. Again, I don't really have a really specific question, but it must have been a powerful experience to be there, to give back, to see people that really do have nothing. I mean, it's a little bit off topic this, but I was talking to somebody recently who's a world champion who does a lot of this type of thing in the Philippines. And he was saying about, in the West, we have, no matter how poor we are, no matter how, low we drop, we can still sign up places to find beds and we can still have resources. Whereas obviously in some of these other countries, and I don't like the term third world personally at all, because I think it's a little bit sort of derogatory, but because they have other things to offer. But certainly in countries with extreme poverty, I'm going to say that much. It's a very, very, very different lifestyle. It's a very, very different perspective. So I'd like to talk about that. I don't really have one specific thing. I mean, you're the one who had the experience. You're the one who was there. So really, anything you'd like to say about the experience and about what made it so special for you, really. I don't mind which angle, but anything you'd like to say about it, really.
Oh, well, I feel you should talk to Street Child themselves, who run the projects, because they do the hard work. I just a very, very small part of it, but I think, to reference the client that you talked about, that is true, that when you're out there, and also now, like, I don't take away any of the stress that people have during these times, but the fact, like, I'm in a house with running water, with electricity, with food in the fridge. Like, if Sierra Leone I mean, I knew that, we know that anyway, but it reminds you of, like, the simple things. But it also reminds you of, like, the street children. They had so much joy, like so much joy in their eyes, and in the most, like, hard conditions, they still smiled. And I was listening to a travel podcast yesterday, and it actually made me think about things differently. And I haven't spoken since I listened to that on another podcast, but they were saying how, white people often share, these romantic stories of, like, oh, the street children were really happy, or like the smells and things. And yes, there was all of that, and it was inspiring their joy, but there was also so much hardship there as well. And I think that combination, like, really teaches you to value what you have, but also to, like, live in the moment. When I was in Sierra Leone, Ebola broke out the day before I flew back. And so again, being, I flew back, I kind of felt guilty about flying back, because, I'd been there when it was breaking out. But again, it just shows you, how profound things can affect a country like that when it is developing. But how, like, the children that we visited in the schools, how they value education and their joy when they learn. And I sponsor, slightly tangent, but I sponsor 2 children through Plan UK, because I would love to have children, and through life circumstances it hasn't happened. But I've sponsored these 2 children for several years now, and one is in Ghana and one is in Haiti. And you can write to them, and they write back, and their support workers send you photos. And again, I'm like, oh, I could go and meet them, like, that's possible. And I just think, yeah, in those countries, it's not for everyone, because there's people down the street from where I live that need help. So, I always try and remember, close to home, there's people who need help, and no one's problem is bigger or smaller, it's just different. And yes, it may be bigger out there, but it might be affecting you differently. So yeah, I have, the other one is in Belize, but that's the first one that I did. And I'm more than happy to chat to any listener about more of it if they feel drawn to wanting to explore it. But for me, it's profound, and it adds a great depth to my life, and I'm grateful for doing it. It's also a cheap way to travel, by the way, just as a side note, because people are like, how do you afford it? I'm like, A, it's generally like the only holiday I have at the moment, and B, you're living in a hammock or a tent and eating largely rice and beans, and your bathroom is a bucket and your toilet is another bucket probably. And so like your cost of living when you're out there is raising money for the charity in your flights. So it is possible, but it's if you want to make that your holiday. So yeah, financially possible.
I know it's another wonderful answer, Kim, because there's a couple of things there that I will highlight this time. Because first of all, I'm glad you said about no one's problems being bigger and smaller, because I was coming at it from that. I was going to mention that anyway, because I should have said that at the beginning, but I'm glad you said it. Also, yeah, I mean, giving the realism of the positive and the negative is not the right term, but like as you say, there's joy and there's sorrow in these places, and it's wonderful to highlight it for people, because I don't think if people have been there, they necessarily have the understanding of what it means on that level, and the realism, including what you just said about if you want to make that your holiday. It's not for everyone, but I don't know. What I'm trying to say badly is I feel you've covered some lovely bases there. So thank you again for another lovely answer.
I think I jump, like, it's not for everyone. And also, if you're at home and you're caring for children and you have, like an elderly parent or someone who you're caring for, or, someone with needs that you need to care for, then it may not be possible. And so when people say, I'm lucky, yes, I'm lucky I can do that. But there are other areas of my life that, I might like that I don't have. And so always try and like help someone find those spaces, and find, like, if they have family and they have dependents, like how can you help that person with the situation that they're in, if they're drawn to do something that is inspiring them through someone else, and like how can they bring a little bit of that in. And there are great local projects that might help someone, or it might be just like a longer term thing, and you listen to podcasts, when you go to events and you hear people, and then when time moves on, maybe you can add something in. But it's like trying to make sense of your life, like where you are, so that you can enjoy where you are.
Absolutely powerful. So there's only a couple more things now, Kim. Just to give you an idea, so it's not going on. I want to touch on, obviously, your book. I want to touch on the TED Talk speaking, and then the last thing I want to do is just any sort of essential tips that you give people to succeed and maximize their potential. I want to do at the end. So that gives you a little bit of time to sort of digest those without any pressure, because obviously you haven't seen the questions. So those are the last subjects, and also so you don't think it's going on and on. That's the last step.
So your listeners don't as well. Hopefully they're still with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, because but I knew this would be a really fantastic interview, but it's so far exceeded my expectations.
Thank you.
I can't quite find a word for it at the moment. So that's why it's gone on a little bit longer. But there we are. Right. So, okay. First of all, your book. I mean, I want to get into that a little bit. I mean, obviously, you've had a lot of success with the book. It's sold very, very well. There's a powerful message in there. I haven't personally read it yet, but I will actually, especially since reading up on it while I was researching for this. So I want to talk a little bit about that. About sort of, I think mainly where the inspiration for it came from. Obviously, we can probably touch on, how well it's done, and, the impact that you feel it's had a little bit. But I want to get into the message behind it, what sort of inspired you to write a book, because I think people will assume, well, you've had these amazing experiences, you can give back to people, so you've written a book, and that's a little bit sort of possibly a shallow description compared to, certainly when I've spoken to a lot of people that have written books. So what was your intention, behind it, in terms of the inspiration of writing it? Where did the idea come from, and what impact did you hope that it would have on people? I suppose that's the best way I can ask that question, really.
Yeah. Well, I was smiling because my book was what I call like, I have the idea and the concept for my big book, as I call it. So the sort of, like text where I will write a big book. And I'd always wanted to write a book. I wrote some little children's books when I was late teens for my siblings who are much younger. And I started writing the big book and realized that a combination of post having the leptospirosis from the rat's disease, my brain was kind of really finding it hard to write. I'd written for a lot of magazines and articles, and written and contributed to 5 or 6 other books in chapters. But when I started writing out the whole book, it just didn't feel like I was ready, it was the right time, and I was clear enough. I did write pretty much the whole book, like 25, 30,000 words. When I realized that it wasn't right, but I'd set the intention, I was like, I'm still going to write something. I want to complete something. And so I just sort of had the idea it was kind of based around, I run a mentoring year on like how to make that year brilliant. And so I took that concept and thought, I'm going to write 52 ways to feel good. And it's not going to take you long to read, Liam. It's 4 pages, 4 lines per page. So it's literally a tip a week. And it's like, open it up when you want. My previous rescue dog, Jake, kind of became known as the Hound of Happiness. And collectively, I would say we wrote it. And so I'm like, Jake and I wrote it. And I crowdfunded it, which was my idea. I crowdfunded it within like 48 hours. And it's kind of had its own sort of legs, really. Like it's gone way wider than I could have thought. Like it's gone to children, it's gone into businesses, like people have bought them for the whole business, and sports teams. And people have said it's just really helped them, like mentally, like pick them up and help them to feel good. And the whole aim was is like, I want a really simple book, but not titled as a self-help book, but like a book that people can just pick up and read it and like open that page. So open the page for the day or the week. And I've had lovely messages from like parents who said, we've given it to our kids and they put it in their bag to school and they open it up. Lots of men have it, and they have it in their kit bags or the downstairs loo, I've discovered, and women by their bed or on the kitchen table. And I'm just really proud of it because I don't feel it's just had its own like little journey, but all the profit I've given to charity, mental health or dogs charities so like not Brave Hounds, Hounds for Heroes. So they do dogs for people like post-military, and mental health, particularly now, like post-suicide support and things like that. And yeah, it's kind of my little book, but it's the Hound of Happiness's book, and I just give it out. And I want people to, I always say I'd love people to buy 2 copies, one for themselves and one for a friend, and spread the feel good. It does have a picture of a dog on the front, which puts some people off, so I do think about having a different cover for some people, but it is what it is, and the big book will come. But I would also say, if anybody is drawn to thinking they want to write a book, it is possible, and I can help you. Just let me know. It just needs, again, structure, discipline, time, patience, trust, and just starting. Just start writing and see where it takes you. But yeah, the little book is on Amazon or direct from me, and then I give them all to charity. And yeah, thank you for asking about it.
Okay, it's a pleasure. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment, Kim, for starters, and also I wanted to highlight that because I knew there's such meaning behind it in terms of the way it helps people, the positive impact that it has, and I sort of had a feeling there'd be more of a message, which makes sense now with what you've explained. So I'm glad we got to mention that. There's only a couple more things, really, literally a couple more things, and obviously one of them I really don't want to leave out of this is obviously the TED Talks, or the TEDx, I should say, speaking, which is in itself incredible. I mean, it's an amazing thing, especially because you mentioned earlier that you had a fear of public speaking and things of that nature. So once again, I don't really have necessarily one specific question about, what, because obviously I could ask, what was it like on stage and what was it like, and this, that, and the other, but I don't want to, because some of the stuff we're coming out with here is very powerful of its own if I open it up a bit broader. So your experience of speaking, for TED Talks, TEDx, I mean, what was your experience like? The question is as simple as that. I mean, what was the whole the experience of doing something like that actually like for you? I know that's a big one, but that's how I'm going to ask.
It was terrifying and amazing. Those are the first 2 words that come into my mind. And then I think it was unexpected. I still can't believe that I've done one. It came up by chance by tweeting the curator of the TEDx, "Can I help you in any way?" And she said, "Actually, would you like to pitch an idea?" And I was like, "No, but can I help you?" And she's like, "No, like, would you like to pitch an idea?" And then I thought, well, I've put it down as a 5-year plan, so I'll pitch an idea, but it's not really going to happen. And then, long story short, because behind the scenes, TEDx is amazing in like the stages that you go through. And I'd say every week I was like, I'm going to pull out, I can't do this. And I mean, to be fair, Mel, who was the curator, was absolutely amazing at kind of going, you can. And I was like, I can't. And when we talk about public speaking, I have invested a lot of professional coaching in public speaking. And I still get nervous, even doing like this podcast, I get nervous. And I use a lot of my NLP and hypnotherapy tools. Like I set up for a race, I'd set up for this, I set up for, you know, going on stage. But it's interesting because it was a couple of years after I'd been really ill. So I basically went onto stage, did my talk, and then came off stage and went home. So I kind of, it's a bit weird because I didn't do the whole like the press and everything, just because of where I was in my recovery. But I feel so lucky that I've done one. I feel like I could do part 2 now in terms of like what's happened since that one to now. And ironically, I did always say I'm going to do Big TED, as I call it. And now I feel like, you know, I feel it would challenge me even more, you know, to get back on stage and do part 2 and work it out. But yeah, if anyone's drawn to doing a TEDx talk or any kind of public speaking, it's just, you know, decide what you want to talk about, but also decide why that matters and why someone would listen to it. And if you need help in public speaking, ask for the help. And it will be the hardest, most uncomfortable thing. Just like if you want to run a marathon, but you've only like walked around the block, it's going to be hard. But if you really want to do it and it keeps coming into your mind, like, please do it or just try, and don't be scared to ask for help.
Amazing. Okay then, Kim, and then the last one I've got now, really the last one to talk about, is this is a bit of a funny one, but obviously, you know, with everything you know you've accomplished and everything you've experienced and all these things, if someone does want to be, I will use the word successful for this, and I'm aware that success comes in different forms for different people, so it's not always the same uniform thing. And I know obviously if people want that, they should speak to you, and there's other things, but just for the purposes of this, if you had to give sort of 3, let's say 3 sort of key ingredients to be, you know, a healthier, happier, and generally more successful person in whatever form that takes, whether it's a healthy family, whether it's more career success, whether it's a specific goal like obviously writing the book or the marathons or whatever, you know, if you have to give advice for people watching this that are sort of maybe 2 or 3 sort of essential ingredients, you know, like when you're cooking to sort of maximize their potential or increase their use of their potential. And I know this is quite a broad one, but that's why I'm trying to narrow it down to just a couple of essentials. What would you say some of the essentials are?
Deep breath. And the deep breath and sigh is like, like during these times, I feel like there's 2 answers. Because right now, you know, if you're listening to it back, this is like, it will be the early stages of December, and it's, you know, we're all in different tiers, and if around the world, you know, COVID and everything has affected everyone. So right now, I feel like the best thing you can do is like day to day, week to week, doing a little journal of like, how am I feeling, mind, body, and soul, sort of sleep, nutrition, movement, breath work, digital detox, like those really basic self-care things are just fundamental to our wellness. And like having those groundings are, you know, just writing it down, pen and paper, and getting off digital can be invaluable. Then connecting with people that you really care about. So I think there's a lot of connection on screen with work, but actually connecting voice and photos with people that you really care about. And then thinking like, just, you know, 1 month, 2 months, however many months is comfortable for you ahead of like, when it is Easter, in 4 or 5 months time, what do I want to reflect back and have done? Those would be like current things, but also everyday things. For a bigger project, I would ask yourself, how can I start to be helpful to myself? Because so often we sabotage ourselves, and I do as well. It's part of a lot of people's human nature. And if you're one of the people that doesn't talk to yourself, then that's different. But the majority of us do. And so how can you start to be helpful to yourself? That's a really key thing. And then with that goal, it's like, start researching it. Like, start looking for people who inspire you, who've done it, who you can relate to. So, if you are, a mum with 3 kids and no support, like, find out people who've done it, who are similar, because it's really important that you relate to that person and you think, well, I don't know how I can do it, but they've done it and they have a similar, like, there's something about them that I relate to. And then don't be scared to reach out and ask for help. Or in fact, do be scared, but reach out because it's the scariest thing. And I know that still, like, I get scared and I think they won't reply, and 9 times out of 10 they don't. But try again, and maybe they will, or try someone else. And the professional support gives you accountability. It gives you a safe place to talk about things. And yes, it's an investment, but more than anything, it's an investment in yourself. And I nearly always have coaching still, like 20 plus years on, because I feel being in a coach position is important if I'm going to coach people, but also I'm human, and it's really important to have that accountability and that safe space. So yeah, and don't lose the joy of the small moments, like the everyday moments. However bad your day is, try and find something that brings you joy and share it, and remember it, and try and let go or understand something that's really blocking you, and know that you matter. You really do.
Incredible. That's a beautiful message, Kim. It's actually very, very moving and very humbling. And there's so many things I can say about that. It's profound, absolutely profound. Um, well, I mean, that covers all the subjects that I wanted to talk about, and a bit more actually, because some of them have opened up in a lovely way into broader things. All I can say at this stage, Kim, is obviously thank you so much for your time, first of all. Second of all, I think this will be profoundly beneficial to people. I hope so, and I believe so, which I knew at the beginning, but I think more so, obviously, now we've actually, covered everything we've covered. And it sounds too little to say, but it really has been a pleasure. I mean, it's really been absolutely thoroughly enjoyable from my side, hopefully from your own.
It has. I mean, thank you. It's been great questions, and it's been really, really good. I hope your listeners have enjoyed it. And if they have any questions, or they just want to share something out loud with me, like I'm thinking of this, please do connect, because it's really nice to hear like feedback from people as well. So please do connect. I'm inviting you to.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.